Phrasal verbs are commonly used in the English language. A phrasal verb is a combination of words. A verb combined with a preposition, an adverb, or both. When these words are used together, they take on a different meaning than that of the original verb. Most phrasal verbs have a literal and figurative meaning. With the literal meaning, the phrasal verb means exactly what it says, while figurative language uses similes, metaphors, hyperbole, and personification to describe something, often through comparison with something different. The figurative meaning helps one to exaggerate the expression so that the feeling is expressed in a better way. Sometimes there's an idiomatic meaning as well. Let's look at the phrasal verb put on. The literal meaning, I put on my clothes. The figurative meaning, I put on weight, meaning I gained weight. The idiomatic meaning, he's putting us on, meaning to mislead us deliberately, especially for amusement. In this course, you will learn many of the phrasal verbs in the English language. You will learn the most popular ones with examples of how they're used. Be up to. Definition: to be doing something, often something bad. Example number 1. What have you been up to lately? Meaning, what have you been doing lately? Example number 2. I think John's up to no good. Meaning, I think he's doing something bad. Build up. Definition: to increase gradually. Example number 1. Kim's anger has really built up over the past week. Meaning, her anger has gradually increased over the past week. Example number 2. The dirt in the drain pipe has built up and is causing a clog in the pipe. Meaning, the dirt has gradually increased and is now causing a plumbing problem. Bring up. Definition: to introduce a subject. Example number 1. Please don't bring that up again. Meaning, please don't talk about that again. Example number 2. Can you please bring up the boxes from the basement? Meaning, can you please bring the boxes from downstairs to upstairs? Build on. Definition: to use something as a base for further development. Example number 1. If you build on your math skills, you may become an accountant one day. Meaning, if you increase your math skills, you may gain a higher position in the math field one day. Example number 2. When we bought our house, it was too small, so we decided to build onto it. Meaning, we added another room to the house to make it bigger. Add up to. Definition: to have a particular result. Example number 1. Matt did a lot of extra work for his boss, but his efforts didn't add up to anything because he lost his job. Meaning, his actions didn't have a good result. Example number 2. If you check the numbers, they'll add up to the correct total. Meaning, when you add up all the numbers, you'll get the correct result. Blow up. Definition: to explode with anger. To explode. Example number 1. I got scared when Jeff blew up at me. Meaning, he got very angry and started screaming at me. Example number 2. When the chemical plant blew up, it was on fire for 2 days meaning when the chemical plant exploded, it created a fire that lasted 2 days. Brush off. Definition: to rudely ignore someone or their ideas. Example number 1. I hate when someone brushes me off. Meaning, I hate when someone rudely ignores me. Example number 2. Please brush the dirt off of the steps. Meaning, please use a brush and remove the dirt from the steps. Bring out. Definition: to yield or amount to. Example number 1. Whenever I'm around Brad, he always brings out the best in me. Meaning, being around him always enables him to be in my happiest mood and to do my best work. Example number 2. Please bring the iced tea out to the patio. Meaning, please pick up the iced tea and take it out to the patio. Ask out. Definition: to invite on a date. Example number 1. I like Brett a lot, and I was so happy when he asked me out. Meaning, I was so happy when he asked me to go on a date with him. Example number 2. Jason asked Michelle out last year, and they're still dating. Meaning, he asked her to go out on a date a year ago, and they're still dating. Back up. Definition: to support what someone is saying. Example number 1. Don't worry if our boss questions you. I will back you up. Meaning, I'll support what you say. Example number 2. Please back up the information on a disk so we don't lose it. Meaning, please make sure it's supported in another location. Bring on. Definition: to cause something to happen, often unpleasant. Example number 1. You brought on your problems by yourself by not being responsible. Meaning, since you weren't responsible, you created your own problems. Example number 2. We were tired of watching the clowns and yelled out for them to bring on the magician. Meaning, we yelled for them to bring the magician onto the stage. Believe in. Definition: to have faith or trust in someone or something. Example number 1. I really believe in you. Meaning, I really have faith in you. Example number 2. I believed in you and you really disappointed me. Meaning, I trusted you and you weren't there for me. Break off. Definition: to suddenly end something. Example number 1. John and Adam broke off their business relationship after only 6 months. Meaning, they ended their business relationship quickly. Example number 2. Martin made an agreement with me to use his office space, but he broke off the agreement in January. Meaning, he ended our agreement in January. Break down. Definition: to lose control of your emotions. Example number 1. When Steve told Julie he was leaving her, she really broke down. Meaning, she started crying uncontrollably. Example number 2. I told Nancy if she gets very upset not to break down in front of her boss. Meaning, I told her not to lose control of her emotions in front of her boss. Burst into. Definition: to erupt in laughter, tears, applause, or flames. Example number 1. Mary burst into tears when she lost her job. Meaning, she suddenly started crying when she lost her job. Example number 2. The audience burst into applause after the wonderful performance. Meaning, they started clapping when the wonderful performance was over. Break up. Definition: to end an intimate relationship with someone. Example number 1. When my boyfriend broke up with me, I was devastated. Meaning, when my boyfriend ended our relationship, I was very upset. Example number 2. Kim broke up with Harry after their 10-year romance. Meaning, Kim ended her relationship with Harry after 10 years. Check on. Definition: to find out how or what someone is doing. Example number 1. Tim isn't feeling well. Can you please go check on him? Meaning, please go and see how Tim is feeling. Example number 2. I have to go check on the turkey I'm roasting and see if it's done. Meaning, I have to go look at the turkey to see if it's finished cooking. Clear up. Definition: to help someone understand the facts of a situation. Example number 1. Martha is confused about the assignment, so I'm going to clear it up for her. Meaning, I'm going to help her understand what it's about. Example number 2. A lot of the students were confused after the lecture, but our professor cleared things up for us. Meaning, he explained things for us to make sure we understood them. Catch up on. Definition: to do work one should have done earlier. Example number 1. I was away for 2 weeks, and I need to catch up on my work. Meaning, I need to get the work done that I missed while I was away. Example number 2. I can't go out to dinner with you because I have to catch up on some homework. Meaning, I can't go out tonight because I have to do some homework that is late. Come up with. Definition: to think of an idea or plan. Example number 1. Let's get together for lunch. I came up with a solution for your problem. Meaning, I thought of a plan to resolve your problem. Example number 2. Let's come up with some ideas for our vacation next summer. Meaning, let's think of some ideas for a nice vacation. Come down with. Definition: to become ill. Example number 1. Anne came down with the flu and was very sick. Meaning, she caught the flu. Example number 2. When our teacher came down with a serious illness, we had a substitute teacher. Meaning, when our teacher became very ill, we had a substitute teacher. Clean up. Definition: to make someone or something become moral or responsible. Example number 1. If Donald doesn't clean up his act, I think Mary will leave him. Meaning, if he doesn't become more responsible, I think she'll leave him. Example number 2. Kathy's boss was tired of her behavior, so she finally cleaned up her act. Meaning, she started acting more responsible. Cut down on. Definition: to reduce the amount of something. Example number 1. My cholesterol was high, so my doctor told me to cut down on fatty foods. Meaning, My doctor told me to reduce the amount of fatty foods I was eating. Example number 2. If Bob doesn't cut down on his drinking, Julie is going to leave him. Meaning, if Bob doesn't reduce the amount of his drinking, she's going to leave him. Come on to. Definition. To make clear that someone is interested in someone in a romantic way. Example number 1. It was so inappropriate when my boss came on to me at work. Meaning, it was very inappropriate when my boss made a sexual advance toward me in the office. Example number 2. When Susan was sitting at the bar, a drunk guy came on to her. Meaning, when she was sitting at the bar, a drunk guy made sexual advances towards her. Calm down. Definition. To become relaxed after being nervous, upset, or excited. Example number 1. I was so upset and stressed after the car accident, and I really needed to calm down. Meaning, I needed to take some deep breaths and become relaxed after the accident. Example number 2. Joan was very upset when she lost her job, but I told her to calm down. Meaning, I told her to relax. Bail out. Definition. To help someone out of a bad situation. Example number 1. When my friend got arrested for drunk driving, I went to the jail and bailed him out. Meaning, I went to the jail and put up the money to get him out of jail. Example number 2. I was late for the seminar I was giving, but my colleague bailed me out. Meaning, he started the seminar for me so it would start on time and I wouldn't have any problems. Buy into. Definition. To believe an idea, often a false one. Example number 1. I'm not buying into your idea that this is a good area. Meaning, I don't believe what you said about this being a good area because I know it's a bad area. Example number 2. Maria bought into Jeff's idea that they should live together, but they are very different and it was a mistake. Meaning, Maria believed Jeff's idea that they would be compatible, but they weren't. Come up. Definition. To arise, to occur, to happen, to transpire. Example number 1. I'm sorry, but I can't make it to your show tonight. Something came up. Meaning, something happened that's preventing me from coming there. Example number 2. I'm never inviting Brad to another party because he always says he's coming. Then he says something has come up and he can't attend. Meaning, he always says something has occurred that's not enabling him to come. Count on. Definition. To depend on or become certain of someone or something. Example number 1. You can always count on me to help you. Meaning, you can always depend on me to help you. Example number 2. I can never count on Victor because he's very unreliable. Meaning, I can't depend on him because he's unreliable. Bring into. Definition. To make someone become involved in a discussion. To cause someone or something to be in a particular situation. Example number 1. Please don't bring Joe into this conversation. It really has nothing to do with him. Meaning, please don't make Joe a part of this conversation. It's none of his business. Example number 2. You brought Karen into the group so you should ask her to leave since she's not following the rules. Meaning, you got her involved in this group, so you should be the one to ask her to leave. Fight off. Definition: to try hard to repel something or keep something away. Example number 1. I feel like I'm catching a cold, so I'm going to take some vitamin C to fight it off. Meaning, I'm going to take some vitamin C to keep the cold away. Example number 2. A guy attacked my friend in the alley and he had to fight him off. Meaning, he had to push him away so the guy wouldn't harm him. Dump on. Definition: to tell someone all of your problems. Example number 1. Whenever I'm with Amanda, she always dumps on me. Meaning, she always tells me all of her problems. Example number 2. Brian told Arthur that if he dumps on him again, he's not going to listen. Meaning, he told Arthur that if he tells him all his problems again, he's not going to listen to him. Fill in. Definition: to tell someone about recent events that they're unaware of. Example number 1. I missed the meeting, so can you please fill me in on what happened? Meaning, please make me aware of what I missed by not being at the meeting. Example number 2. I took notes so I can fill you in on what you missed in class. Meaning, I took notes so I can make you aware of the material you missed. Dream up. Definition: to think of a plan or idea, especially an unusual one. Example number 1. Rich is always dreaming up the craziest schemes. Meaning, he's always thinking of the craziest schemes. Example number 2. You always dream up these useless plans. Meaning, you always think of these plans that aren't practical or useful. Force on. Definition: to push on someone something they don't want. Example number 1. Charles is always trying to force his strange ideas on me. Meaning, he's always trying to push me into believing his strange ideas. Example number 2. A drunk guy was trying to force himself on Judy, and she called security. Meaning, a drunk guy was trying to push himself on her, so she called security to protect her. Dwell on. Definition: to think or talk about something for too long, especially something unpleasant. Example number 1. Ron is always dwelling on the past. Meaning, he always talks about the past for too long. Example number 2. If you keep dwelling on all of those negative things, people aren't going to want to listen to you anymore. Meaning, if you keep talking about all those negative things, people won't want to listen to you anymore. Dish out. Definition: to give freely. Example number 1. Janet dished out the ice cream to all of the kids. Meaning, she put a serving of ice cream in each child's bowl. Example number 2. I don't like the way my boss is always dishing out criticism. Meaning, I don't like the way he frequently criticizes his employees. Force out of. Definition: to make someone tell you something they don't want to tell you. Example number 1. The boy was afraid to admit that he broke the vase, but his father forced it out of him. Meaning, his father convinced him to admit what he did. Example number 2. My coworker wouldn't admit that he played a prank on our boss, but when our boss got very angry, we forced it out of him. Meaning, We made him admit what he did to our boss. End in. Definition, to result in. Example number 1. Our vacation ended in disaster. Meaning, our vacation resulted in a disaster when the hurricane hit. Example number 2. Ken's race didn't end in a good way because he fell and broke his ankle. Meaning, his race didn't have a good result because he fell and broke his ankle. Face up to. Definition, to accept or acknowledge an unpleasant fact or situation. Example number 1. Patrick couldn't face up to the fact that his daughter was failing out of school. Meaning, he couldn't accept the fact that his daughter wouldn't be able to graduate. Example number 2. Nancy couldn't face up to the fact that her company was closing her department. Meaning, she couldn't accept the news that her department was closing and soon she'd have no job. End up. Definition, to come to be in a particular situation without planning it. Example number 1. We ended up getting lost on our way to the mountains. Meaning, we accidentally got lost on our way to the mountains. Example number 2. Raymond ended up getting a promotion when his boss retired. Meaning, his company offered him a promotion after his boss left the company. Figure out. Definition, to think about something until you understand it. Example number 1. I couldn't figure out the answer to the question. Meaning, I kept thinking about it and trying to get the correct answer, but I couldn't think of it. Example number 2. You have to figure out how to put the cabinet together. Meaning, you have to work on it until you know how to put it together. Feel up to. Definition, to feel capable or well enough to do something. Example number 1. Jane doesn't feel up to coming to the party. Meaning, she doesn't feel well enough to come to the party. Example number 2. Do you feel up to running the marathon next week? Meaning, do you feel that you're capable of running the marathon? Fill in for. Definition, to do someone's work for them. Example number 1. Kevin filled in for me while I was out sick. Meaning, he did my work for me when I was out sick. Example number 2. When the dancer broke her leg, her understudy had to fill in for her. Meaning, when she broke her leg, her understudy took her place in the show. Finish up. Definition, to complete a task. Example number 1. The teacher told the students to finish up the project. Meaning, she told the students to complete their work on the project. Example number 2. When they finished up the renovation, they had to clean the entire place. Meaning, when they completed the renovation, they had to clean the whole place. Go on. Definition, to happen or take place. Example number 1. What's going on here? Meaning, what's happening here? Example number 2. The teacher saw all the students huddled around one girl in the playground, and he asked, what's going on here? Meaning, he wanted to know what was happening there. Get in. Definition, to arrive. Example number 1. Did you get in early last night? Meaning, did you arrive at home early last night? Example number 2. What time did you get in from work on Monday? Meaning, What time did you arrive home from work on Monday? Find out. Definition. To discover or obtain information. Example number 1. Did you find out what time the flight arrives? Meaning, did you get the information on the time the flight arrives? Example number 2. Can you find out when the show opens? Meaning, can you get the information about the opening of the show? Freak out. Definition. To become suddenly upset, angry, or extremely surprised about something. Example number 1. Mary freaked out when she saw a snake in her backyard. Meaning, she got very upset when she saw the snake in her backyard. Example number 2. Adam freaked out when he found out that he failed his exam. Meaning, he got very upset when he got the news that he failed the exam. Get into. Definition. To negatively affect someone's behavior. To affect, influence, or take control of someone. Example number 1. I don't know what got into him. Meaning, I don't know what's making him behave that way. Example number 2. Lately, Sally's been saying that she has given up on life. I don't know what's gotten into her. Meaning, I don't understand what's affecting her thoughts and making her talk this way. Get off someone's back. Definition. To make someone stop annoying or bothering someone. Example number 1. I told my supervisor to get off my back because I was working as fast as I could. Meaning, I told him to stop trying to rush me because I was working as quickly as I could. Example number 2. Bob told his wife to get off his back about mowing the lawn because he was too busy to do it. Meaning, he told his wife to stop annoying him about mowing the lawn because he didn't have time to do it. Give in. Definition. To surrender or yield. Example number 1. The army gave in to the enemy when they lost too many soldiers to be able to fight the war. Meaning, the army surrendered when they realized there was no way they could win the war. Example number 2. I wanted to see a movie, but all of my friends wanted to go bowling, so I just gave in and went with them. Meaning, I yielded to their wishes and did the activity they wanted to do. Gang up on. Definition. To join or work with others against someone. Example number 1. The boys in the playground ganged up on the new student and started a fight with him. Meaning, the boys joined together and started a fight with the new student. Example number 2. My colleagues didn't believe in my perspective on the project, and they all ganged up on me at the meeting. Meaning, they all joined together to show their disapproval of my idea. Go into. Definition. To explain or discuss something in detail. Example number 1. I don't need you to go into a long explanation about what happened. Meaning, I don't need you to explain in detail what occurred. Example number 2. Whenever I ask you a simple question, you always go into a long story about the topic. Meaning, when I ask you something simple, you always discuss many details about the subject and make it complicated. Get on with. Definition. To continue or advance, often after an interruption. Example number 1. After the fire drill, the teacher got on with her lesson. Meaning, When the fire drill was over, the teacher resumed her lesson. Example number 2. We stopped the seminar for a lunch break, then we got on with the presentation. Meaning, we continued the seminar after our lunch break. Give up. Definition. To stop doing, having, or working on something. Example number 1. We gave up on the project because it didn't seem to be worth the effort. Meaning, we stopped working on the project because it wasn't worthwhile. Example number 2. I gave up trying to convince Vincent to stop smoking because no matter what I said, he just kept smoking. Meaning, I stopped trying to convince Vincent to stop smoking because it was a waste of time and I knew he wouldn't stop. Go off. Definition. To leave, often suddenly. Example number 1. After our argument, Jay went off and slammed the door behind him. Meaning, he left suddenly. Example number 2. The boy's mother told him not to go off on his own while he was hiking with the group. Meaning, she told him not to leave the group when they were hiking in the forest. Foul up. Definition. To make a mistake or spoil something. Example number 1. Mike fouled up on the project and his boss fired him. Meaning, he made a big mistake while working on the project and he got fired. Example number 2. When Nancy fouls up, she always apologizes sincerely. Meaning, whenever she makes a mistake, she always apologizes. Fix up. Definition. To arrange for 2 people to meet, usually for a date. Example number 1. I fixed Nancy up with Fred and they've been dating for 2 years. Meaning, I arranged for them to meet and go on a date and they're happy and still dating each other. Example number 2. My friend wants to fix me up with her neighbor. Meaning, she wants to introduce me to her neighbor so we can go out on a date. Grow up. Definition. To stop acting immaturely. Example number 1. I'm tired of John's childish behavior and I told him to grow up. Meaning, I told him to stop acting immaturely. Example number 2. Even though Jenny is 50 years old, I don't think she'll ever grow up. Meaning, I don't think she'll ever behave maturely. Get out of. Definition. To obtain something beneficial from someone or something. Example number 1. The seminar was a waste of time because I really didn't get anything out of it. Meaning, I didn't learn anything from the seminar. Example number 2. Did you get anything out of the meditation class you took? Meaning, did the meditation class benefit you in any way? Hang in. Definition. To persevere despite difficulties. Example number 1. Tony lost his job, but I told him to hang in there because he'd probably find a new one soon. Meaning, I told him to try to keep the faith and to persevere. Example number 2. My friend has some health problems, but I told her to hang in there. Meaning, I told her to stay strong and not lose hope of recovering. Iron out. Definition. To solve a problem or difficulty. Example number 1. I think it's a good idea to iron out your differences right after an argument. Meaning, I think it's good to make up after an argument and put your differences behind you. Example number 2. Mary and Richard have a successful marriage because they're always able to iron out their differences. Meaning, their marriage is happy because they always get together and work out their problems. Hold down. Definition: to be able to keep a job. Example number 1. James is never able to hold down a job. Meaning, he can never keep a job and always goes from one job to the next. Example number 2. I broke up with my boyfriend because he couldn't hold down a job. Meaning, I didn't want to be involved with him anymore because he could never keep a job and was always unemployed. Hit it off. Definition: to get along well with someone one has just met. Example number 1. I went on a blind date with Jason last week and we really hit it off. Meaning, we got along very well right away. Example number 2. I introduced my cousin to my friend and they really hit it off. Meaning, they really got along well from the moment they met. Hold on. Definition: to wait for a brief period. Example number 1. Please hold on for a moment. I have to answer the door. Meaning, please wait a moment and I'll be right back. Example number 2. Please hold on a moment. I'm getting another call. Meaning, please wait a moment while I answer this other call. Knock it off. Definition: to stop an annoying behavior. Example number 1. Knock it off. You're really annoying me. Meaning, please stop that annoying behavior. You're really bothering me. Example number 2. The teacher told the screaming children to knock it off or they'd get punished. Meaning, the teacher told the kids to stop their annoying behavior or she'd punish them. Hear out. Definition: to listen to someone until they're finished speaking. Example number 1. Please stop interrupting me and hear me out. Meaning, please listen and let me finish what I'm trying to say. Example number 2. If you hear me out, you'll understand what I'm trying to explain to you. Meaning, if you stop interrupting me and listen to what I'm saying, you'll understand what I mean. Hold up. Definition: to delay someone or something. Example number 1. There was a hold up on the project and it won't resume until next month. Meaning, there's a delay on the project and we can't start working on it again until next month. Example number 2. What's the hold up here? Meaning, what's causing the delay on the road? Keep up. Definition: to move or progress at the same rate as someone or something else. Example number 1. We had to slow down while hiking so Alan could keep up with us. Meaning, we had to slow down so Alan could stay at the same pace as us. Example number 2. Tim has such a busy lifestyle that I can't keep up with him. Meaning, he's always so busy, I can't maintain the same pace as him. Hang up. Definition: to end a phone call. Example number 1. I'm sorry, I have to hang up now. I have to leave for work. Meaning, I have to end the call now because I have to go to work. Example number 2. If you hang up without saying goodbye to someone, I think it's rude. Meaning, I think it's rude to end a phone call abruptly without saying goodbye to someone. Kiss up to. Definition: to try to please someone so they'll do something for you. Example number 1. When my friend started kissing up to me, I knew he wanted something. Meaning, when he started being overly nice to me, I knew it was because he wanted a favor. Example number 2. Adam always kisses up to me to get what he wants. Meaning, he always does nice things for me for no reason, but that usually means that he wants something from me. Lash out. Definition: to verbally attack someone. Example number 1. I don't like Alice because she's lashed out at me many times. Meaning, I don't like her because she has verbally attacked me many times. Example number 2. Our boss can't control his temper and is always lashing out at someone. Meaning, he's always verbally attacking someone. Laugh off. Definition: to ignore or joke about something bothersome. Example number 1. Daniel found Jennifer's comment very insulting, but I just laughed it off. Meaning, I ignored her ignorant comments. Example number 2. Robert always laughs off his co-worker's critique of his work. Meaning, he ignores the comments his co-workers make about his work. Have it out with. Definition: to angrily confront someone. Example number 1. If Brad yells at me over something silly one more time, I'm going to have it out with him. Meaning, if he yells at me again, I'm going to confront him about it. Example number 2. Janet had it out with Sandra when she saw her flirting with her boyfriend. Meaning, Janet angrily confronted Sandra because she was flirting with her boyfriend. Hang out. Definition: to spend time somewhere or with someone. Example number 1. I love hanging out with Brian. Meaning, I really enjoy spending time with Brian. Example number 2. Mark and I love hanging out at the beach. Meaning, we always enjoy spending time at the beach. Hold off. Definition: to postpone. Example number 1. We had to hold off on the renovations of the house because we ran out of money. Meaning, we had to postpone the renovations because we didn't have enough money. Example number 2. John and I had to hold off on our vacation because we couldn't get time off from work. Meaning, we had to postpone our vacation because we couldn't get the time off from work. Keep out of. Definition: to not become involved in a troublesome situation. Example number 1. My in-laws were arguing, but I kept out of it. Meaning, I didn't get involved in their argument. Example number 2. My co-workers were criticizing each other's work on the project, but I just kept out of it. Meaning, I stayed away and didn't get involved in their argument. Heat up. Definition: to become more intense. Example number 1. When I saw that the discussion between my boss and my supervisor was heating up, I walked away. Meaning, when I noticed that their conversation was getting very intense, I left. Example number 2. Whenever conversations tend to heat up in our house, my husband always leaves. Meaning, when things become intense, he walks out. Kick out. Definition: to force to leave. Example number 1. The rude student was kicked out of class for his inappropriate behavior. Meaning, because of his rude behavior, the teacher forced the student to leave the classroom. Example number 2. The man started screaming while at the conference, and the security guard kicked him out. Meaning, the security guard forced him to leave because of his disruptive behavior. Lay off. Definition: to stop employing someone. Example number 1. I got laid off from my job last week. Meaning, my company ended my employment last week. Example number 2. Due to the bad economy, my husband's company had many layoffs. Meaning, His company ended the employment of many people due to the bad economy. Look up to. Definition. To admire or respect someone. Example number 1. I really look up to my teacher. Meaning, I really respect my teacher. Example number 2. Many people look up to their favorite celebrity. Meaning, many people admire and respect their favorite celebrity. Let up. Definition. To decrease, cease, or stop. Example number 1. It looks like the rain is letting up. Meaning, it looks like the rain is stopping. Example number 2. Ever since I came home, John has been yelling at me and he's not letting up. Meaning, he's been yelling at me since I got home and he won't stop. Live up to. Definition. To do as well as expected. Example number 1. This moisturizing cream doesn't live up to my expectations because I've been using it for a month and my skin is still dry. Meaning, the cream isn't as good as I expected it to be. Example number 2. Brad didn't live up to his parents' expectations when he failed out of school. Meaning, he didn't do as well as his parents expected him to. Lead up to. Definition. To move toward an important event or decision. Example number 1. What were the problems you had that led up to your divorce? Meaning, what was the cause of your divorce? Example number 2. During the 4 weeks leading up to Christmas, our store got busier and busier. Meaning, during the 4 weeks before Christmas, our store's business increased every week. Make up. Definition. To invent a story or excuse, often to mislead someone. Example number 1. The child made up a story that he took a trip through outer space. Meaning, he invented a story that he took a trip through outer space. Example number 2. 2 men made up a story that they were going into the apartment building to fix a plumbing problem and they robbed the building. Meaning, they made up an excuse that they were there to fix something and then they robbed the building. Look into. Definition. To try to find out the truth about a problem. Example number 1. My account balance was incorrect, so the supervisor said she'd look into it. Meaning, she said she'd review my account to see what the problem was. Example number 2. We need to look into the reason that water is coming into the basement. Meaning, we need to try to find out why the water is coming into the basement. Look down on. Definition. To think one is better than another. Example number 1. I don't like Sarah because she always looks down on other people. Meaning, she always thinks she is better than the people around her. Example number 2. Brad isn't respected by his coworkers because he always looks down on them. Meaning, he always thinks and acts like he is better than them. Lose out. Definition. To not get something someone wants. Example number 1. I lost out on the free cruise because I didn't win the contest. Meaning, I didn't win the cruise that I wanted to get. Example number 2. Bill lost out on the opportunity to date Samantha because by the time he asked her out on a date, she already had a boyfriend. Meaning, he missed the opportunity to date her because by the time he asked her out, she already had a boyfriend. Let down. Definition. To disappoint someone. Example number 1. Nick let me down when he refused to go to the dance with me. meaning he disappointed me by not taking me to the dance. Example number 2. Our vacation was a real letdown because it rained the whole time we were there. Meaning, our vacation was a big disappointment because it rained the whole time. Look out for. Definition. To protect someone's best interests. Example number 1. When I was little, my big brother always looked out for me. Meaning, my big brother always protected me. Example number 2. My friend was a senior when I arrived at college, and she always looked out for me. Meaning, she showed me around and protected me. Mess up. Definition. To make a mistake or do something badly. Example number 1. When Victor messed up at work 5 times in a row, his boss fired him. Meaning, when he consistently made mistakes, his boss fired him. Example number 2. Whenever I mess up, I always try to correct my mistakes. Meaning, when I do a bad job, I always try to correct what I've done wrong. Live down. Definition. To overcome the shame of a misdeed or mistake. Example number 1. When I messed up the project, my coworker told me our boss would never let me live it down. Meaning, he would keep reminding me of the mistake I made. Example number 2. Rachel's husband never let her live down the fact that she lost $10,000 in the casino. Meaning, he always reminded her of the bad judgment she had to gamble away a large amount of money. Live off. Definition. To depend on someone or something for money or food. Example number 1. Charlie is 35 years old and still lives off of his parents. Meaning, his parents still give him money to pay his bills. Example number 2. My friend is upset that her daughter is 30 and still lives off of her. Meaning, she's upset that her daughter is 30 and she can't support herself. Make up. Definition. To forgive. To apologize to someone and be friends again after an argument. Example number 1. I often fight with my sister, but we always make up. Meaning, we always forgive each other after the fight. Example number 2. Ryan and Kathy had a big fight, but they made up right away. Meaning, they forgave each other right away, right after the fight. Make up for. Definition. To take the place of something that has been lost or damaged. Example number 1. Nothing can make up for the loss of a child. Meaning, nothing can take the place of your child. Example number 2. Tony bought Amanda some flowers to make up for being late. Meaning, he gave her flowers so she wouldn't be too upset about the fact that he was late. Make out. Definition. To succeed or not as a result of effort. Example number 1. How did you make out on your test? Meaning, did you get a good grade on your test? Example number 2. William's team played in a championship game, and I'm wondering how they made out. Meaning, I'm wondering if they won the game. Measure up. Definition. To be good enough or to meet someone's expectations or standards. Example number 1. Ellen's parents told her that she didn't measure up in their view. Meaning, They told her that she didn't meet their expectations of her. Example number 2. Tim knew he measured up to his parents' expectations when he graduated medical school with honors. Meaning, he knew his parents were very proud of him and he met their expectations when he did so well in medical school. Point out. Definition. To inform someone of something they didn't know. Example number 1. I thought the used car I was buying was good until my mechanic pointed out that the engine had a leak. Meaning, he informed me that the engine had a leak that I wasn't aware of. Example number 2. The new student came to school wearing shorts, but the teacher pointed out that that wasn't acceptable. Meaning, the teacher told her that wearing shorts was not part of the dress code and is forbidden. Phase out. Definition. To gradually stop using or providing something. Example number 1. Fax machines are being phased out by computers. Meaning, fax machines aren't needed much anymore because computers are replacing them. Example number 2. The toll collectors' jobs are being phased out by the electronic toll machines. Meaning, toll collectors are losing their jobs because the electronic machines are taking their place. Move on. Definition. To leave a job or situation. Example number 1. When I was 18, I decided it was time to move on. Meaning, I decided it was time to leave the small town I lived in and move into the city. Example number 2. Greg was tired of dating Sheila, and he told her he had to move on. Meaning, he told her that the relationship was no longer good for him and he had to end it. Pick up on. Definition. To notice or understand something subtle. Example number 1. Did you pick up on the fact that Tammy was wearing her shirt inside out? Meaning, did you notice she was wearing her shirt inside out? Example number 2. I picked up on the way Charles criticized his wife. Meaning, I noticed the subtle way in which Charles criticized his wife. Piss off. Definition. To anger. Example number 1. Ted's rude behavior really pissed me off. Meaning, his rude behavior made me very angry. Example number 2. Debbie told me not to piss off our new coworker because he had a bad temper. Meaning, she told me not to do anything to make him angry because he has a bad temper. Pin down. Definition. To make someone commit to or be clear about something. Example number 1. If you don't pin Mary down to a date for the party, she'll never start planning it. Meaning, if you don't make her commit to a date, she'll procrastinate and she'll never start planning it. Example number 2. If you want to find out when the construction is starting, you have to pin Mike down. Meaning, you have to talk to him and make him commit to a start date. Pass up. Definition. To not take advantage of an opportunity or an offer. Example number 1. Even though the new job offer I got was much farther away, I couldn't pass it up because the salary was higher. Meaning, even though it was farther away, I wanted to take advantage of the offer because of the higher salary. Example number 2. When it was time for dessert, I couldn't pass up the cheesecake, even though I was on a diet. Meaning, Even though I was on a diet, I had to order the cheesecake because it looked so delicious. Move up. Definition: to get a better job or move to a higher level. Example number 1. I was so happy when my fiancé moved up the ladder at work. Meaning, I was happy when he got promoted to a better position in his company. Example number 2. When I started working for Jeff, he told me if I did a good job, I'd move up in the company. Meaning, he told me if I did a good job, I'd get promoted to a higher position. Mix up. Definition: to mistake a person or thing for another. Example number 1. My neighbor has twin daughters, and I always mix them up. Meaning, I can never tell her daughters apart. Example number 2. My friend Matthew has a voice that's similar to my boss's voice, and I always mix them up on the phone. Meaning, they sound a lot alike, and I always mistake one for the other when talking on the phone. Open up. Definition: to express your feelings or your thoughts. Example number 1. I can't help you unless you open up to me. Meaning, I can't help you with your problems unless you tell me what's going on. Example number 2. My boyfriend is a private person and he always keeps things to himself, but I told him he needs to open up if we're going to have a healthy relationship. Meaning, I told him he needs to express his thoughts and feelings in order for us to have a good relationship. Pour out. Definition: to say in a rush, usually something private that one has been holding back. Example number 1. I thought something was bothering Pam, but she wouldn't talk about it. Then last week, she suddenly poured her heart out to me. Meaning, she suddenly told me about the problems that have been bothering her. Example number 2. Paul poured out his heart to me. Meaning, he told me about all the personal problems he has that he hasn't shared with anyone. Pick on. Definition: to tease or mistreat someone. Example number 1. I felt sorry for the new student because some of the boys were picking on him. Meaning, I felt sorry for him because some boys were teasing him and treating him badly. Example number 2. When Tara's friends started picking on her, she began to cry. Meaning, when her friend was teasing her and mistreating her, she started to cry. Own up to. Definition: to admit to a wrong one has done. Example number 1. Daniel might not always do the right thing, but at least he's man enough to own up to his mistakes. Meaning, it's good that he's mature enough to admit what he's done wrong. Example number 2. When the store owner accused the boy of stealing candy, the boy owned up to it. Meaning, he admitted what he did wrong. Pile up. Definition: to increase in quantity or amount. Example number 1. I can't go out of the office for lunch because my work's piling up and I need to finish it before 5 o'clock. Meaning, I can't go out for lunch because the amount of work I have keeps increasing and I need to finish it by 5 o'clock. Example number 2. When I was away, my work piled up, and now I have to work extra hours all week to finish it. Meaning, while I was away, a lot of work was left for me. So when I went back, I had a lot of work to finish. Put down. Definition: to insult or criticize in a mean or cruel way. Example number 1. I don't get along well with people who are always putting others down. Meaning, I don't get along with people who insult and criticize people in a cruel way. Example number 2. Robert's girlfriend was always putting him down, so he finally broke up with her. Meaning, his girlfriend was constantly criticizing him in a mean way, so he ended their relationship. Put up with. Definition: to tolerate. Example number 1. I have to put up with Peggy because she's my mother-in-law, but I really don't like her. Meaning, I have to tolerate her, but I don't enjoy being around her. Example number 2. Marcia couldn't put up with Jack's rude behavior anymore, so she broke up with him. Meaning, she couldn't tolerate his rude behavior, and she broke up with him. Put in. Definition: to spend the time doing something or working. Example number 1. We've put a lot of work into our house since we've bought it. Meaning, we've done a lot of things to our house to improve it. Example number 2. I've put a lot of time and effort into this project. I hope it's successful. Meaning, I've worked hard on this project and hope it's successful. Put someone on. Definition: the act of teasing or misleading someone, especially for amusement. A prank or a joke. Example number 1. I knew John was putting me on when he said he won the lottery. Meaning, I knew he was joking and it wasn't true. Example number 2. I thought my sister was putting me on when she said she was pregnant, but it was really true. Meaning, I didn't think my sister was telling the truth when she said she was pregnant, but it was really true. Put off. Definition: to delay or postpone something to a later date. Example number 1. We had to put off our wedding because my fiance was injured in a bad accident. Meaning, we postponed the wedding because my fiance was injured. Example number 2. I put off doing my taxes and I had to rush to my accountant to get them done. Meaning, I kept postponing doing my taxes and had to rush to get them done before the deadline. Rip off. Definition: to charge more for something than it's worth. Example number 1. I hate getting ripped off. Meaning, I hate when someone overcharges me for something. Example number 2. I don't shop in the clothing store in my neighborhood because it's always a rip-off. Meaning, I don't shop there because they always overcharge for things. Rub off on. Definition: to acquire a habit or quality of another person. Example number 1. I'm afraid Joe's bad habits will rub off on my daughter. Meaning, I'm afraid my daughter will acquire some of his bad habits. Example number 2. It's not good to spend time with negative people because their negative attitude can rub off on you. Meaning, it's not good to spend time with them because you can acquire their negative attitude. Read up on. Definition: to become informed about a subject. Example number 1. I wanted to learn more about photography, so I read up on it. Meaning, I researched it to learn more about it. Example number 2. I read up on remodeling so I can decide what changes I want to make to my home. Meaning, I needed to learn more about remodeling, so I did some research on it. Pull off. Definition: to succeed at a difficult task. Example number 1. People usually can't surprise me, but Jim pulled off the surprise party he planned for me. Meaning, he was able to plan the surprise party without me knowing about it. Example number 2. I don't know much about gardening, but I was able to pull it off and plant a beautiful garden. Meaning, I don't know much about gardening, but I was able to get it done and plant a nice garden. Rule out. Definition. To determine something is unlikely or impossible. Example number 1. My dog was limping, but the veterinarian ruled out the possibility that his leg was broken. Meaning, he determined that it wasn't broken. Example number 2. I don't think Mark is a great candidate for the job, but I haven't ruled him out yet. Meaning, I haven't decided that he's definitely not right for the job yet. Run into. Definition. To meet someone unexpectedly. Example number 1. I hadn't seen Matthew in years, but I ran into him at the supermarket. Meaning, I met him unexpectedly at the supermarket. Example number 2. I ran into my old boyfriend at a restaurant and it was very uncomfortable. Meaning, I met him unexpectedly and it was awkward. Pan out. Definition. To develop or happen in a particular way. Example number 1. My relationship with Jerry didn't pan out. Meaning, our relationship didn't work and we broke up. Example number 2. I hope your plans for the future pan out. Meaning, I hope your future works out the way you want it to. Run out of. Definition. To use up. Example number 1. We ran out of milk. Meaning, we used all the milk and we don't have any left. Example number 2. If we run out of copy paper, I'll go to the store and buy more. Meaning, if all the copy paper is used up, I'll get some more. Run up against. Definition. To encounter difficult or unexpected problems. Example number 1. While hiking, we ran up against a wild bear. Meaning, we encountered a wild bear while hiking. Example number 2. The project wasn't successful because we ran up against a major problem that we couldn't fix. Meaning, we had an unexpected problem and had to give up the project. Read into. Definition. To believe a situation has more importance than it does. Example number 1. Larry always reads into things and creates problems that don't exist. Meaning, he overanalyzes things and creates problems that aren't there. Example number 2. Why do you always read into things? Meaning, why do you always make a situation more complicated than it is?
Did you see how quickly my manager responded to my email? What do you think it means?
I wouldn't read too much into it. Maybe your manager just happened to be checking emails at that time.
You're right. I tend to read into things too much sometimes.
It's easy to do, but it's often more straightforward than we think.
Ride out. Definition. To persevere until a difficult situation has ended. Example number 1. We had to ride out the storm. Meaning, we had to wait inside the house until the storm was over. Example number 2. My in-laws came to live with us for a while, and I really don't like having them here, but I just have to ride it out. Meaning, I have to be patient and persevere until they leave. Straighten up. Definition: to make tidy or to stand up straight. Example number 1. Jenny, please straighten up your room before you go to bed. Meaning, please make your room neat and tidy before you go to bed. Example number 2. Tim's posture is bad and he should really straighten up. Meaning, he should really work on his posture and stand up straight. Stop off. Definition: to make a brief visit. Example number 1. I'll stop off at your house on my way to the concert. Meaning, I'll go to your house for a short visit. Example number 2. I stopped off at the market for a couple things on the way home from work. Meaning, I went to the market quickly just to pick up a few things on my way home. Run up. Definition: to accumulate a big debt or to spend a lot of money. Example number 1. Brad ran up a huge tab at the bar. Meaning, he kept accumulating bills at the bar for over a month and he owed them a lot of money. Example number 2. Sarah ran up a lot of charges on her credit cards. Meaning, she accumulated a lot of debt on her credit cards. Reach out. Definition: to attempt to get closer to someone or to resolve bad feelings. Example number 1. I reached out to Amy after not hearing from her for 3 years. Meaning, I contacted her and tried to rekindle our friendship. Example number 2. John reached out to me after our argument. Meaning, he called me and tried to resolve the bad feelings we had after our argument. Rush into. Definition: to do something suddenly without thinking enough about it. Example number 1. Marriage is a big step and it's not good to rush into it. Meaning, it's a big step, so it's not good to get married without putting a lot of thought into it. Example number 2. Mary didn't want to rush into getting a dog until she learned about the responsibilities of owning a pet. Meaning, she didn't want to get a dog quickly without thinking about everything involved with it. Run out on. Definition: to abandon someone. Example number 1. Pam ran out on Bill and moved in with another man. Meaning, she abandoned him for another man. Example number 2. I love my husband and would never run out on him. Meaning, I love him and care about him a lot, and I would never abandon him. Run off with. Definition: to run away with someone and have an affair. Example number 1. Mark ran off with another woman. Meaning, he left his wife for another woman. Example number 2. My cousin's wife ran off with another man and he was devastated. Meaning, she left him for another man and he was very upset. Rub in. Definition: to remind someone of something embarrassing, to intentionally hurt them. Example number 1. I know I made a mistake, but you don't have to rub it in. Meaning, you don't have to intentionally remind me of my mistake. Example number 2. I had an embarrassing moment at work and my coworker keeps rubbing it in. Meaning, he keeps reminding me of my embarrassing moment. See in. Definition: to recognize positive qualities in someone. Example number 1. I don't know what Jenny sees in Herman. Meaning, I don't know what positive qualities she thinks he has. Example number 2. What do you see in Susan? Meaning, what positive qualities do you recognize in her? See off. Definition. To go with someone to a bus, train, ship, or plane terminal to say goodbye. Example number 1. I went to see my boyfriend off when he left for his business trip. Meaning, I took him to the airport when he was leaving for his trip and we said goodbye there. Example number 2. John came to see me off when I went on my cruise. Meaning, he brought me to the ship and wished me well on my vacation. Shake up. Definition. To upset or frighten. Example number 1. The bank teller was very shaken up after the bank robbery. Meaning, the teller was extremely frightened by the thief. Example number 2. After my car accident, I was really shaken up. Meaning, after the accident, I was really scared and upset. Settle down with. Definition. To establish a home of one's own. Example number 1. My boyfriend and I settled down with each other when we decided to get an apartment together. Meaning, we established a home of our own when we moved in together. Example number 2. My friend Janet settled down with Steve and now they're getting married. Meaning, they established a home together and now they decided to get married. Settle down. Definition. To calm down. Example number 1. The teacher told the unruly children to settle down. Meaning, she told them to calm down, be quiet, and behave themselves. Example number 2. Mary hoped her new puppy would settle down soon. Meaning, she hoped her puppy would calm down and feel relaxed soon. Spell out. Definition. To explain something clearly. Example number 1. If you don't understand what I wrote, I'll be happy to spell it out for you. Meaning, if you don't understand what I wrote, I'll explain it clearly for you. Example number 2. Why do I always have to spell it out for you? Meaning, why do I always have to explain things for you? Shape up. Definition. To improve your performance. Example number 1. I told my student if he doesn't shape up, he can't stay in the advanced class. Meaning, I told him if he doesn't improve his performance, he'll have to leave the advanced class. Example number 2. Pat has to shape up if he wants to get into college. Meaning, he has to improve his performance if he wants to get into college. Ship out. Definition. To leave a place or to move goods or people away from a place. Example number 1. Thousands of containers were shipped out from the docks in New York City. Meaning, thousands of containers were moved from the dock onto a large ship. Example number 2. The weather was bad, so the tourists shipped out to another island. Meaning, the tourists left the island because of the bad weather and went to another island. Snap out of. Definition. To stop feeling a certain way. Example number 1. Adam's been depressed for a while and I really hope he snaps out of it. Meaning, I hope he stops feeling depressed soon. Example number 2. My son is in a very cranky mood and I hope he snaps out of it soon. Meaning, I hope his mood changes soon and he becomes happy again. Stick up for. Definition. To defend someone. Example number 1. When I was little, my brother always stuck up for me. Meaning, when I was a child, my brother always defended me. Example number 2. A good friend will always stick up for you if someone else tries to hurt you. Meaning, a good friend will always stand behind you, protect you, and defend you. Show up. Definition: to arrive. Example number 1. Jane is usually unreliable, so I hope she shows up on time. Meaning, she's usually late and I hope she arrives on time. Example number 2. I had a blind date on Saturday, but he never showed up. Meaning, he never arrived, so the date didn't happen. Stumble on. Definition: to discover someone or something unexpectedly. Example number 1. When we were sightseeing, we stumbled on a tiny village not usually visited by tourists. Meaning, while traveling, we accidentally discovered a small village that tourists don't usually go to. Example number 2. I stumbled on an old friend at the carnival. Meaning, while at the carnival, I discovered an old friend unexpectedly and we had a nice chat. Settle on. Definition: to finally decide on something. Example number 1. While house shopping, we couldn't decide between 2 beautiful homes, but we settled on the one with the pool. Meaning, we finally decided to buy the home with the pool. Example number 2. John and I couldn't decide which car to buy, but we finally settled on the sports car with the sunroof. Meaning, we decided to buy the sports car with the sunroof. Show off. Definition: to try to impress people with someone or something. Example number 1. Nancy is a show-off and always wears flashy jewelry. Meaning, she always tries to impress people by wearing her fancy jewelry. Example number 2. I don't like Donald because he's such a show-off. Meaning, I don't like him because he always tries to impress people with material things. Sink in. Definition: to truly understand some information or facts. Example number 1. I read the instructions on how to put the table together, but it wouldn't sink in. Meaning, even after reading the instructions, I couldn't understand how to put the table together. Example number 2. I attended the lecture, but the lesson didn't sink in until I went home and studied it. Meaning, I didn't truly understand the lecture until I spent some time studying it. Shake off. Definition: to get rid of a problem or illness. Example number 1. I couldn't manage to shake off the cold I had and it lasted 2 weeks. Meaning, I couldn't get rid of the cold I had and it lasted a long time. Example number 2. I felt depressed after my friend's funeral and I had to try to shake it off to go do my sales presentation. Meaning, I had to get rid of my depressed feelings and get motivated to go do a sales presentation at work. Start off. Definition: to begin. Example number 1. We started off on our hike up the mountain at 7 a.m. Meaning, we began our hike up the mountain at 7 a.m. Example number 2. Brad and I started off our marriage living in an apartment, but after a few years we bought a house. Meaning, we began our marriage living in an apartment, but soon we bought a house. Scrape up. Definition: to manage with great difficulty to collect enough of something, especially money, or to find the things or people that you need. Example number 1. I finally scraped up enough money to catch up on my credit card bills. Meaning, I was finally able to put together enough money to pay my credit card bills. Example number 2. Do you think we can scrape up enough people to play a soccer game on Saturday? Meaning, do you think we can get enough people together to play a soccer game on Saturday? Sort out. Definition. To organize tasks or things that are mixed up. Example number 1. The child mixed up 3 puzzles and the teacher told him to sort them out. Meaning, the teacher told him to organize the puzzle pieces with the other pieces that belong with them. Example number 2. I had to sort out the clothes for summer and winter. Meaning, I had to organize the clothes for the summer and winter seasons. Speak up. Definition. To voice your opinion instead of remaining silent. Example number 1. If you have any complaints, please speak up. Meaning, if you have any complaints, please voice your opinion about them. Example number 2. If you have any questions about the directions, please speak up now. Meaning, if you have any questions, please ask them now. Set off. Definition. To annoy. Example number 1. Whenever I'm with Warren, he always sets me off. Meaning, he always annoys me in some way. Example number 2. Jane doesn't like to spend time with Dan because he always sets her off. Meaning, he always annoys her when she's with him. Slow down. Definition. To decrease the rate or speed of something. Example number 1. Please slow down, you're driving too fast. Meaning, please lower the speed of the car, you're going too fast. Example number 2. I told Michael that things were going too fast and we should slow things down a bit. Meaning, I told him that things were progressing too fast in our relationship and we should take time and not rush into a serious relationship. Storm off. Definition. To quickly or angrily leave a place or situation. Example number 1. When Amy saw her boyfriend flirting with another girl at the party, she stormed off. Meaning, she quickly and angrily left the party. Example number 2. I think it's so immature the way Tim storms off every time we have an argument. Meaning, it's so immature the way Tim leaves quickly when we have an argument. Shoot off one's mouth. Definition. To say something you shouldn't. Example number 1. It's embarrassing going somewhere with Bill because he's always shooting his mouth off about something. Meaning, it's embarrassing going somewhere with him because he always says something he shouldn't. Example number 2. I don't like rude people who are always shooting their mouth off. Meaning, I don't like people who are always saying inappropriate things that they shouldn't say. Straighten out. Definition. To correct bad behavior or personal problems. Example number 1. If Jay doesn't straighten out, he's going to fail out of school. Meaning, if he doesn't correct his bad behavior, he's going to fail out of school. Example number 2. If Sarah doesn't straighten out her life, she'll probably end up alone and miserable. Meaning, if she doesn't fix her personal problems, she'll probably end up alone and unhappy. Screw up. Definition. To mess up or make a mistake. Example number 1. Teresa was a great lady, and I think John really screwed up when he broke up with her. Meaning, I think John made a big mistake when he broke up with her. Example number 2. My boss told me if I screw up one more time, he's going to fire me. Meaning, my boss told me if I mess up again, I'll get fired. Skip off. Definition. To leave a place quickly and secretly in an improper way. Example number 1. When we went out to dinner with our friends, they skipped off on us without paying the bill. Meaning, they left suddenly without paying their share of the bill. Example number 2. Our boss was angry because Adam skipped off in the middle of the presentation. Meaning, our boss was mad because Adam left suddenly in the middle of the presentation. Setup. Definition. To arrange or cause something negative to happen, or to assemble or prepare a structure for use. Example number 1. The robbery was a setup involving people that worked at the company. Meaning, the robbery was planned and arranged with people who worked at the company. Example number 2. The workers set up the circus tent in less than an hour. Meaning, the workers arranged and constructed the tent in less than an hour. Take up. Definition. To fill one's time or space. Example number 1. I told my neighbor she can't come over to my house every day because she's taking up too much of my time. Meaning, I told her not to come over every day because she's filling up a lot of time that I need to get chores done. Example number 2. All of Larry's hobbies take up too much of his time. Meaning, Larry's many hobbies fill up too much of his day and he doesn't have time to get his work done. Turn off. Definition. To lose interest in someone or something. Example number 1. My date turned me off when he was rude to the waiter. Meaning, I lost interest in him when I saw his rude behavior. Example number 2. Alfred's date turned him off, so he didn't ask her out again. Meaning, he lost interest in her and didn't want to date her anymore. Take out. Definition. To take someone on a date or to pay for an outing. Example number 1. I took my friend out to lunch yesterday. Meaning, I treated her to lunch. Example number 2. Robert took Kathy out to a beautiful restaurant by the water. Meaning, he took her on a date to a beautiful restaurant by the water. Take someone up on. Definition. To accept someone's offer or invitation. Example number 1. When my friend invited me to go to the concert, I told him I'd take him up on the offer. Meaning, I'll accept the invitation to go to the concert with him. Example number 2. I took Matt up on his offer to go on a cruise. Meaning, I accepted his offer to go on a cruise with him. Space out. Definition. To lose awareness of one's surroundings and stare off into space. Example number 1. My classmate is very strange and always appears to be spaced out. Meaning, she always appears to be staring off into space. Example number 2. When I passed the homeless man on the street, he appeared to be spaced out. Meaning, he appeared to have lost awareness of his surroundings. Split up. Definition. To end a relationship or marriage. Example number 1. I was upset when I found out that my aunt and uncle were splitting up after 30 years of marriage. Meaning, I was upset that their marriage of 30 years ended. Example number 2. Whenever I'm with Bob and Amy, they're arguing, and I have a feeling they're going to split up. Meaning, I have a feeling their relationship is going to end. Sober up. Definition: to gradually become less drunk. Example number 1. I told Mark that he should sober up before he gets in his car and drives home. Meaning, I told him he should wait until he's no longer drunk until he drives his car. Example number 2. It takes time to sober up after drinking a lot of alcohol. Meaning, it takes time to become less drunk after you drink a lot. Stay out of. Definition: to not get involved. Example number 1. This discussion is between Patty and I, so please stay out of it. Meaning, please don't get involved in our conversation. Example number 2. My boss told my coworker to stay out of the conversation we were having. Meaning, my boss told my coworker not to get involved in our conversation. Take out on. Definition: to direct anger with one person or situation to another person. Example number 1. Don't take it out on me. Meaning, don't direct your anger towards me. Example number 2. My boss had a fight with his wife and he took it out on me. Meaning, he directed the anger that he had for his wife toward me. Throw up. Definition: to bring up food or drink from your stomach. To vomit. Example number 1. I had a stomach virus and was throwing up for 2 days. Meaning, I couldn't stop vomiting for 2 days. Example number 2. Whenever Pat gets drunk, he throws up. Meaning, whenever Pat gets drunk, he vomits. Size up. Definition: to make a judgment about a person or situation. Example number 1. I'm good at sizing people up when I first meet them. Meaning, I'm good at making a correct judgment about a person when I meet them. Example number 2. I'll have to size up the job before I decide if I want to work on it. Meaning, I'll have to take a look at the job and make a judgment about it before I decide if I want to work on it. Take off. Definition: to leave quickly. Example number 1. As soon as the thief saw the police, he took off very fast. Meaning, when the thief saw the police, he left very quickly. Example number 2. Alan took off in the middle of the meeting because he had an emergency at home. Meaning, he left the meeting quickly because he had an emergency at home. Think up. Definition: to come up with an idea or to think of an idea. Example number 1. I had to think up a plan to get us out of the trouble we were in. Meaning, I had to come up with an idea to get us out of the trouble we were in. Example number 2. If you think up a good idea for the presentation, let me know. Meaning, if you come up with a good idea for the presentation, let me know. Tell off. Definition: to yell at someone. Example number 1. I told my coworker off when she interrupted my important meeting. Meaning, I yelled at her when she interrupted my important meeting. Example number 2. My work environment is very stressful because my boss is always telling someone off. Meaning, my work environment is stressful because my boss is always yelling at someone. Take on. Definition: to accept work or a responsibility. Example number 1. John took on too many assignments and he couldn't finish them. meaning he accepted too many assignments and he couldn't get them done. Example number 2. Mary always likes to take on a challenge, meaning she always likes to accept a challenge. Turn out. Definition. To develop or end in a particular way, or a result. Example number 1. How did your sales presentation turn out? Meaning, what was the result of your sales presentation? Example number 2. I have to see how my new kitchen turns out before I decide if I want that contractor to work on my bathroom. Meaning, I have to see how the construction on the kitchen looks before I decide if I want him to do my bathroom. Sweat it out. Definition. To anxiously see a situation through to the end. Example number 1. We went to see my son's game and we were sweating it out until the end. Meaning, we were anxiously waiting to see who won the game. Example number 2. I don't like the assignment I'm doing at work, but I just have to sweat it out. Meaning, I just have to deal with it until it's over. Step in. Definition. To get involved. Example number 1. When my kids were arguing, I had to step in. Meaning, I had to get involved and stop them from arguing. Example number 2. When the 2 teams got into a fight after the game, the security guards had to step in. Meaning, the security guards had to get involved and break up the fight. Team up. Definition. To join with another to do something. Example number 1. I teamed up with my coworker and we expressed our complaints to our boss. Meaning, we joined together and voiced our complaints to our boss. Example number 2. The kids in the middle school teamed up with the kids from the high school to raise money for a new playground. Meaning, the kids from the middle school and the high school joined together to raise money for a new playground. Stir up. Definition. To purposely cause trouble or excitement. Example number 1. Kevin always stirs things up when he goes somewhere. Meaning, he always causes trouble when he goes somewhere. Example number 2. If you come to the meeting with me, please don't stir things up. Meaning, if you come to the meeting with me, please don't purposely create any trouble. Talk out of. Definition. To convince someone not to do something. Example number 1. A depressed man was about to jump off the bridge, but the police were there trying to talk him out of it. Meaning, the police were trying to convince him not to do it. Example number 2. I decided I'm definitely quitting my job, so don't try to talk me out of it. Meaning, I decided I'm quitting my job, so don't try to convince me not to do it. Stand out. Definition. To be easily noticed in a crowd or group by looking or sounding different. Example number 1. Jenny stood out in the crowd in her bright orange dress. Meaning, she was easily noticed in the crowd since she was wearing a bright orange dress. Example number 2. If you want your presentation to stand out, use bold colors. Meaning, if you want your presentation to be easily noticed, use bold colors. Tip off. Definition. To give someone secret information. Example number 1. Joe tipped off the police that his neighbor was selling drugs. Meaning, Joe told the police that his neighbor was selling drugs. Example number 2. Someone tipped off our boss that we left work early. Meaning, someone told our boss that we secretly left the office early. Talk into. Definition. To convince someone to do something. Example number 1. Matt tried to talk me into driving him to the airport, but I said no. Meaning, he tried to convince me to drive him to the airport, but I didn't. Example number 2. Mary always tries to talk me into doing something that I don't want to do. Meaning, she always tries to convince me to do something that I don't want to do. Turn into. Definition. To become someone different than before. Example number 1. Adam was a troubled teenager, but it was nice to see that he turned into a responsible young man. Meaning, it was nice to see that he became a responsible young man. Example number 2. Whenever Keith drinks, he turns into a nasty person. Meaning, whenever Keith drinks, he starts behaving like a totally different person. Stare down. Definition. To focus your gaze on someone to make them feel uncomfortable. Example number 1. The teacher stared down the student when she thought he was cheating on the test. Meaning, she focused her gaze on him to make him feel uncomfortable so he'd stop cheating on the test. Example number 2. Whenever I enter the lobby, the security guard stares me down. Meaning, whenever I enter the lobby, the security guard stares at me to make me feel uncomfortable and intimidated. Turn up. Definition. To appear or show up unexpectedly. Example number 1. I lost my wallet and I hope it turns up soon. Meaning, I lost my wallet and I hope it appears soon. Example number 2. Sarah can't find her passport and she hopes it'll turn up soon. Meaning, she hopes that it will show up soon. Weigh on. Definition. To burden or pressure. Example number 1. All of the problems in my life are weighing on my mind. Meaning, all of my problems are a real burden to me. Example number 2. The crime the thief committed weighed on his mind a lot, and he ended up confessing. Meaning, the thief was so burdened by his crime that he couldn't take the pressure anymore, and he confessed to the police. Walk out on. Definition. To leave a spouse or someone suddenly. Example number 1. I can't believe Martin walked out on Jenny after their marriage of 19 years. Meaning, I can't believe he left her suddenly after such a long marriage. Example number 2. I told my husband if he treated me disrespectfully one more time, I'd walk out on him. Meaning, I told him if he disrespected me one more time, I'd leave him very suddenly. Work on. Definition. To try to improve or make something better. Example number 1. I'm working on getting in shape, but it's difficult to keep up with my diet and exercise program. Meaning, I'm trying to improve my body and get fit, but it's very difficult for me. Example number 2. If you don't work on your attitude, I think your boss will fire you. meaning, if you don't improve your negative attitude, I think you'll get fired. Work out. Definition. To succeed or reach a happy conclusion over time. Example number 1. I know you had an argument with Bill, but don't worry, things will work out. Meaning, I know you and Bill argued, but don't worry, you'll make up and reach a happy conclusion. Example number 2. If you lose your job, don't worry, things will work out. Meaning, don't worry if you lose your job. In time, you'll succeed and find a better job. Wear down. Definition. To pressure someone to give in. Example number 1. The stress of having 2 jobs and taking care of my family is wearing me down. Meaning, the stress of 2 jobs and taking care of my family is putting so much pressure on me, and I don't think I can do all that anymore. Example number 2. Ralph's boss is really wearing him down. Meaning, his boss is putting a lot of pressure on him, and I think he's going to give in and quit his job. Write off. Definition. To recognize that something is a failure or has no value. Or, to cancel a debt. Example number 1. The car was damaged so badly in the accident that they had to write it off. Meaning, they recognized it as no longer having any value. Example number 2. When I caught my friend lying to me, I wrote her off. Meaning, I no longer had a friendship with her as it had no value to me after I caught her lying. Warm up. Definition. To begin to feel comfortable with someone or something. Example number 1. My son didn't like my friend at first, but I think he's warming up to her. Meaning, he didn't like her when he first met her, but he's beginning to like her and feel comfortable with her. Example number 2. At first, the children were afraid of their new teacher, but now they're warming up to her. Meaning, they were afraid of their new teacher at first, but now they're starting to feel comfortable with her. Use up. Definition. To exhaust or consume completely. Example number 1. I used up all of my sick days. Meaning, all of my sick days have been exhausted and I have none left. Example number 2. If you use up all the milk, please replace it. Meaning, if you consume all the milk, please get more so I can drink it when I want to. Wise up. Definition. To have a wider or deeper understanding of something, or to be able to act more intelligently in the future. Example number 1. I told Nancy that if she doesn't wise up and leave her jobless boyfriend, she's going to be unhappy. Meaning, I told her if she doesn't have a better understanding of the man she's living with, she'll end up unhappy. Example number 2. Mark finally wised up and stopped lending his friends money. Meaning, Mark finally got smarter and stopped lending money to people. Zero in on. Definition. To focus on a particular spot. Example number 1. The cops zeroed in on the criminal's pattern and figured out where he lived. Meaning, the police focused their search on a certain area and figured out where the criminal lived. Example number 2. If you zero in on the problem, you'll be able to fix it. Meaning, if you focus on the problem, you'll be able to correct it. Well up. Definition. To gradually or steadily flow upwards or outwards, so as to begin to fill or overflow something. Example number 1. Barbara's eyes started to well up with tears as she watched the sad movie. Meaning, her eyes started to fill up with tears as she watched the sad movie. Example number 2. The water started to well up in the sink. Meaning, the water started to flow upward in the sink and was about to start overflowing. Wrap up. Definition. To bring to a conclusion. Example number 1. We're going to wrap up the meeting at 2 o'clock. Meaning, we're going to finish the meeting at 2 o'clock. Example number 2. Please don't wrap up the seminar until the last person's questions are answered. Meaning, don't end the seminar until everyone's questions are answered. Walk off. Definition. To leave someone, often in a rude or angry manner. Example number 1. The angry actor walked off the stage and quit the play. Meaning, the actor left the stage angrily and quit the play. Example number 2. If you walk off while our boss is speaking, he'll probably fire you. Meaning, if you leave angrily during our boss's speech, he'll probably fire you.
Did you find our exploration of English idioms insightful? Kindly like, subscribe, and activate notifications for more enlightening content. Thank you for watching.